and welcome to the December 19th Board of Selectmen meeting. Ask you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll read the agenda first. We'll go over our November 21st and December 5th meeting minutes. We'll then move on to community relations announcements and open forums. We have two appointments and resignations tonight. We have an appointment for the Historical Commission and an appointment for a full-time patrolman. We have three scheduled appointments this evening. A 6:45 appointment for a water sewer update with Peter Boria, a 7 p.m. appointment for a fire chief interview with Kurt Meskis, and an 8 o'clock appointment for fire chief interview with Ed Knopf. Under new business, we have three items. Number one, a site plan application on Griffin Road for a solar. Number two, a site plan application for Pegasus Motors LLC. And number three, the MMA annual meeting and voting delegate. We'll then move on to old business, the community reports, BoS December policy reviews, the student select persons report, who is not here tonight, the town administrator's report, and then any other business unknown at the time of posting. One thing that we did not know at the time of posting was the facilities technician and custodian. Our next meeting will be January 2nd, and then we will go into executive session. We will exit executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. With that, what are the board's wishes? Also, please note that Selectman David Singer is participating remotely, so all votes taken will be by roll call vote. David, can you say hi to everyone, please?
Yep, can you hear?
Yep, everyone can hear you. If there's any troubles, please let us know. With that. So with that, what are the board's wishes with our November 21st meeting minutes?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion we approve the November 21st meeting minutes as written.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second. Any discussion? We'll go by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath.
Aye.
Ms. Noble.
Aye.
Mr. Singer.
Aye.
Mr. Swenson.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now, what about the meeting minutes of December 5th?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion we approve the meeting minutes of December 5th as written.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion? Seeing none, move by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath.
Aye.
Ms. Noble.
Aye.
Mr. Singer.
Aye.
Mr. Swenson.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to community relations announcements and open forum. The town hall will be closed on the following days: Monday, December 25th, Monday, January 1st, and Monday, January 15th. Happy holidays. The Charlton Rays Foundation presents the Taste of the Towns, which will be held on Saturday, January 27th, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at St. Joseph's Church Hall at 10 H. Putnam Road Extension. Please purchase tickets at the Charlton Senior Center or Cornerstone Bank in Charlton. For more information, please call 508-248-2231 or 508-868-5289. The 2018 dog licenses are in. They are available in the town clerk's office or through the mail. Winter parking ban. A winter parking ban will be in effect during and 48 hours following a snowstorm of over 3 inches for this upcoming and all ensuing winters on all streets in the town of Charlton. Are there any other announcements? Mr. Swenson.
I'm just going to do my regular Rays plug if I can. It's that time of year.
Please do.
For those, excuse me, for those who may not know, the Rays Foundation, Rays stands for Residential Energy Assistance for Seniors. The Rays Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It's a 100% volunteer organization that raises funds to help Charlton seniors with their energy needs, a bit in the summer, but mostly heating in winter. And in a town like Charlton, we do have to remember we have seniors in this town that do sit home at night and worry about, do I buy my medicine, do I pay my rent, or do I buy oil so I can be warm? So again, the group is 100% volunteer. We haven't really had much cold weather this year, and they were already well into double digits of requests for assistance. So there's definitely a need out there. The two big events that Rays hosts to raise money are the Taste of the Towns, which the chairman read, the announcement for. It's coming up the 27th, so I'd encourage everyone to buy a ticket for that. And there's also a lottery calendar that's for sale that you can buy that as well. So if you see people selling tickets and calendars out in front of Ted's or wherever, please participate if you can, and if you can just throw $1 or $2 in the donation bucket. It is a great organization, and again, 100% of the funds raised go to help Charlton seniors with their energy needs. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great program, a great event, and like Mr. Swenson says, it goes right to the residents of Charlton. So please consider it. Are there any other announcements? Is there anyone here for open forum? Mr. Sage?
Stephen Sage, Lincoln Point Road. Before I get into what I had brought up a little bit last meeting, I want to cover some of the things I did not bring up that I wanted to talk about. Can you tell me what the latest status is of putting together an override? Is there any movement on that at all? Or are we waiting for numbers to come out from people, primarily school?
Well, I guess one thing through the chair I would recommend, Mr. Sage, is that open forum usually is something pretty quick. If, for a discussion like that, if you would put that on the agenda as an agenda item, I can give you all the backup document, have the board ready to answer those questions, and have all the information ready to go, so.
But there's something still going forward.
There is.
That's what I wanted to
The
know.
school committee, as you know, you attended Wednesday night's meeting, as well as I did, and they are moving forward.
Okay. When, as a chairperson of the Charlton Public Library, when are budget guidelines coming out to departments so that we can start working on our next year's fiscal budget?
They should be coming out shortly. We're putting that together. The finance team has already started to look at it. We will be talking with the finance committee tomorrow night on the revenue forecast, and then the direction will come out to the departments.
Like a couple weeks?
I'd say right at the first of the year.
Okay. That's a couple weeks, I guess.
It is.
Okay. I wanted to go back to longevity pay in town. I brought this up last time, and I spoke, I didn't have any kind of response from anybody. I'd like to know, what is the purpose of longevity pay in a quick statement, if you have one?
Simply put, it's an opportunity to reward people who work in town more money and offer incentives to stay longer and serve Charlton.
Okay. And then I pointed out that everybody but 15 members of the United Professional Alliance of Charlton, which is the professional support staff, everybody else gets that started at 10 years. They have to wait to 15 years. And as an employee, actually as the employer of the people in Charlton, I view myself as a citizen of Charlton as their employer. I view you as my representative in dealing with the ins and outs of what's happening in town. Does it make sense that all but 15 employees start at a different time frame?
I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Sage, but in this case, it's dealing with the different unions and what has been bargained for in the past and what has been important to both sides. And to my knowledge, it hasn't been a major priority from that union. Ms. Craver?
I'm not sure a major priority. I certainly, they ask for things, we negotiate, we get to a point where some things move forward, some things do not. I would be a little uncomfortable having a conversation. We've just finished the contract, which you are aware of. It's just been signed, and it's the terms. We'll begin negotiating that contract again shortly. If you have comments, I would be glad to, we can put those together and bring that to the selectmen again. I would suggest we put that on a meeting as an agenda item.
But even the group that is a non-collective bargaining group, which are all of the non-union members, brought this issue up, and they got to start at 10 years also. And it seems that if you're going to be consistent with employees in this town and encourage them to stay on the job and appreciate that they are staying longer and providing the service to this community, you would want to say, you're of value too, the same as all the other people. And I mean all the other people. It's not like there's differing between the fire and the police and the
Right.
highway.
And obviously, they're very valuable employees, and we appreciate all
I
the work
hope
that
so.
they do. Ms. Noble?
Thank you for bringing this topic up again. I just want you to know that when the clerical unions, whom you're speaking of, were in the process of negotiating the contract that was recently completed, I heard from several members about what they wanted, what they didn't want, what they were dissatisfied about. They came and spoke with me on a number of occasions. At no time did they ever bring up the longevity issue. I have an open door policy, and at no time has anyone else brought this up. However, if they do, it's more than within the realm of possibility to have this revisited at the next contract negotiation, which, as I understand, will be coming up sooner rather than later.
Yeah, but
Mr. Swenson?
I'm just going to add to it just a little bit. I was one of the selectmen representatives, board of selectmen representatives that negotiated the last contract. And as the town administrator stated, there was a list. One of the first things we always do is we each submit a list of what our top goals are. There were some issues that had to be tackled that, until the contract is out publicly, I'm not going to get too deeply into, that took precedent over the longevity. There were other issues even that the union identified as more pressing and more important than that. Now that this one has been done and the next one will be starting, it's something, if the union so chooses that that's an important issue for them, then they can by all means put it on the list of topics they want to bargain.
And when town meeting voted to give longevity to non-union representatives got together, made this request, and brought it to town meeting floor. So it's not like we, out of spite, that we gave longevity to our non-unions.
But I understand that, but I feel that as bargaining members, with the goal of longevity being to reward people for time serving in this town, you as the bargaining persons should have said to them, all the other unions start at 10 years. And in order to keep it consistent across the board, so that nobody feels that they're different, we should start you out at 10 years and then jump to 15 like everybody else in town. Not say, well, let's go to 15 for you, and then you up it again at 20. I'm not even sure what the details of the second step are.
I would say
but-
that during bargaining, I know this is getting a little long, we have some scheduled appointments.
Yeah, but you
to get
started
to.
5 minutes late too, so I'm looking at the time.
So, as I finish my point, that more goes into these bargaining sessions where concessions are made, things are created, just negotiated. So it's not like we're saying you get 10, you get 15. It's part of the bargaining process. Mrs. Swenson, do you want?
My last comment, because what we look at, one of our responsibilities as a town when we go into any contract negotiations is the cost to the town. Everything that's entered into has a cost. If it's added sick time, if it's added days off, if it's an additional holiday, any of those changes cost the town money. And our goal, our responsibility, is to look at what those costs are. We tackled several issues in this last contract that had significant cost factors to them. And I would say that the union itself put some of those priorities above longevity. So it's nothing on our part saying we don't think you deserve it, we disagree with it, you shouldn't have it for this reason. It was more a matter of, when it came to what this contract was going to cost the town over its life, there were priorities on both sides that came before changing the longevity.
I'll reserve comments for time.
But we do
I-
appreciate what you're saying, and we understand that it's a way to reward time in the town of Charlton and to keep.
And I think you, as our representative, should have a equal basis on how you treat the employees as far as an item like longevity. So it's not dependent upon what somebody negotiates.
That's not the way the union works,
But,
negotiations, that is the whole bit.
but it's really clear in my mind that the lowest paid people in our town have to wait 15 years versus the highest people in our town have to wait only 10 years. That is a bigger cost than what paying, I believe, is 8 people that have 10 years at this point in that union would, the amount of money would be a drop in the bucket. And everybody would know that they're appreciated after 10 years of service, not 10 years for you and you and you and you, but you have to wait to 15. It just appears unfair and unjust, in my opinion.
We do appreciate you sharing that information. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here for open forum? Seeing none, we'll move on to our first item under appointments and resignations, appointment for Historical Commission. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a request from the Historical Commission asking the board to appoint Lee Cousins of 107 Daniels Road to the commission. As the Historical Commission has been in need of members, I would recommend the board make the appointment as requested. This would be for a term of 3 years.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion we appoint Lee Cousins to the Historical Commission.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? We'll go by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Ms. Noble?
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 2, as an appointment for a full-time patrolman. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a copy of a memo from Chief Maxfield stating that due to the recent promotion within the Charlton Police Department, there exists a vacancy, a vacant full-time patrolman position. After discussion with the command staff and human resource director, Chief Maxfield is recommending the board appoint part-time police officer Timothy Bullock to the open full-time position. Officer Bullock was a self-sponsor of the full-time Massachusetts State Police Academy and graduated on June 23rd, 2017. He was hired by the Charlton Police Department on December 23rd, 2015 as a permanent part-time officer. I would ask the board to appoint Timothy Bullock as a full-time patrolman for the Charlton Police Department.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Bullock. Welcome, Chief. Do you want to say anything?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just back to Mrs. Craver's point, Officer Bullock is a 30-year resident of the town of Charlton. He is a veteran of the United States Army, 2 tours in Iraq, 1 tour in Kuwait. He, at great expense to himself, put himself through the police academy, the full-time police academy, not drawing a paycheck, paid his own way, put his life on hold for 6 months. Shows you the type of commitment that this young man has for this town, and I'm happy to have him.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we appoint Timothy Bullock as a full-time police officer in Charlton.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Ms. Noble?
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Congratulations.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Good luck to you.
Good.
We're very fortunate to have someone as highly credentialed as this and someone who's dedicated enough to, put themselves through the academy. It's amazing. So.
He doesn't look old enough to have that
Yeah, no
resume.
And a 30-year resident, which
And a
is
30-year
nice. He
resident,
knows
yeah,
the community
exactly.
well.
It's amazing how we keep getting the perfect candidates, and just wanted to give congratulations to Mr. Bullock and welcome
Thank
aboard.
you, Peter.
All right, we'll
There you
move
go.
on to our first scheduled appointment,
On the
the
wrong
6:45 appointment for a water sewer update with Peter Boria. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Peter Boyer is here to provide an update to the board on water sewer. We've scheduled him for 6:45.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Boria.
Hello.
Take it away.
Through the chair, I know in the past Ms. Craver's worked closely with the Water Sewer Commission. It seems like since I've been appointed, she's kind of stepped back, which I appreciate, to give me the chance to kind of get my feet wet and kind of take some control and set some direction. But because she's not so involved, I wanted to make sure that you guys as a board are still up to date and informed on what's going on, and also just to present it in a different form than our meetings, so that people know what to expect come springtime for our 2018 projects.
Perfect, thank you.
So the first one to discuss would be the Casella Water Line Extension on Berry Corner Road and H Foot Road. Currently, it's at 30% design. The town of Southbridge is working with Ty and Bond to help design and to do the oversight of the construction. Jim Philbrook from the Board of Health is still working on getting as many residents along that line as possible to connect. Currently, there's approximately 60 parcels that are signed up to connect, and we're still waiting, trying to get the remaining 30 to commit to connecting to that water line. So I believe the ACO had us required to get at least 27 people to commit, and we've exceeded that. The other portion of the ACO that we were responsible for was acquiring the land for the pump station property, which we have done. So as far as that project goes, we're pretty much just, we sit back, watch. We have McClure doing design oversight on our behalf to make sure that the line is designed as adequate and acceptable to us, because once this line is installed and operational, we'll attain ownership of it. So everything looks pretty good for that. January 9th at 7 p.m. in this room, Jim Philbrook and Ty and Bond will be holding an informational meeting on that water line extension. So if you know of any residents in that area who still have questions or concerned about what's happening, I think that'd be a great time for them to show up and have their question answered in a very quick time frame. The time frame for construction on that project is May through December of 2018. So if everything goes well, it should be done and installed by the end of the next construction season.
Here's hoping.
Yes. Any questions on that?
Pete, when you say installed, does that mean water flowing and residents using it, or is that a little further down the line?
I don't believe that the physical connections will be made. So when you talk about installing the water line, it will be the water line and the laterals to curb stops on the property line.
Okay.
That will be installed, pressure tested, ready to be operational. I don't know if they're going to immediately follow up with that to do the physical connections, or if that will have to wait till the following construction season.
Ms. Noble?
With this water line installed, will it be attached to hydrants along the road?
Yes.
How many, do we know?
I believe they have the spacing approximately every 500 feet.
Okay, thank you.
So either 500 or 1,000, I'm not, they talked about both, I'm not sure where it's landed yet, but yes, there are hydrants spaced evenly throughout the water line.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So the next project we have is the Route 169 pump station. That's right at about 90% design and is getting its final approvals from DEP, the town of Southbridge, and we received a final set of plans to review for comment by the end of the year. Kleinfelder plans on bidding the project in February 2018, and the timeline for that is also March to November of 2018. So that should be done, installed and done by the end of the construction season. Kind of a much smaller project scope of work, so it should be pretty easy for them to put one crew on it to get it in and get it done. So, so that should hopefully get done as well. The school loop is also at 90% design. It's got most of its, I believe it has all of its DEP approvals actually. They're just ironing out some final details for the water age model, figuring out where they need, where and if they need to put pressure reducing valves and pump stations along the design. I was talking with Maura Johnson from Kleinfelder. She plans on having an informational meeting probably towards the end of the winter, just before the spring construction starts, when she has more information of what the process will be and what's going to take place, and can share that with the residents and the abutters. It's going to be an interesting project to see how they choreograph it throughout the town, because it affects Old Worcester Road, Mugget Hill Road, and you know, a popular area of town. How they're going to coordinate closing the roads down and having the construction take place, especially with school. And hopefully they can work it out and coordinate it so that when school is closed, they focus on Mugget Hill Road only. And then, you know, they bounce back or do whatever they have to do to make sure that gets done while school's not in session.
I hope there are enough details, you know, with Charlton and surrounding towns to help fill those.
Well, I don't think that's really,
That's
that's
not
never
gonna
been
be
a
a
problem. But, Yeah, so I did talk to Maury about trying to get in touch with the fire chief, the police, fire, and highway, and start sooner than later, trying to figure out and coordinate what the best plan of attack will be. And then, again, as soon as we know that, yeah, we'll definitely be sharing it with the residents. And I believe that's kind of the same scale as Casella, where it's gonna, the Casella Road extension. The property line and laterals will be installed. There probably will not be any physical connections made this construction season. So unfortunately, residents who are thinking that the line's gonna be installed and they're gonna be able to get hooked up immediately, I'm not sure that's the case. So, yes, construction should definitely be happening this construction season, but that doesn't mean that there will be water flowing.
So it looks like possibly the summer of 2019 should be like,
For-
that's the target.
Yes.
Water to the houses date.
Yes. And I know that's probably not what people are looking to hear, but it's the reality of it.
Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair. Pete, where is Mobile Exxon with going out to bid?
Again, they're just about through design, and any changes they make now shouldn't affect the DEP approval, so I believe they're just waiting to go out to design after the first of the year in January or February.
Okay.
And their design process is so different, I mean, their bidding process is so different than ours that the timeframes aren't the same, so. I believe they have identified contractors who they want to get bids from, and once they get those, they can award whenever they seem fit. So, they should be able to start that construction as soon as spring breaks and the ground thaws, hopefully. And again, the last real project we have going is the East Charlton Waterline Extension that we received the grant for. This is one that we're gonna have complete control and oversight of because it's our grant. So we are, again, I've been working with Robin. We met with Aquarion to try and get that first step started. Been working with Chris McClure to talk about creating an RFP for construction design and oversight and get that done. The time frame on this is maybe a little bit aggressive as I keep looking back at it, and it wants us to have the project out to bid by February of 2018. So the construction, luckily, it doesn't have a starting construction till the end of the season, August, September of 2018, and finishing in the spring of 2019. So that shouldn't be a problem, but to get to there's quite a few things we need to coordinate to make sure we can make that happen. Right? I mean, if you want to add, you're definitely helping me out with this one as well.
I've just received the contract today, the pre-contract, so I've started filling that out. I also forwarded it to, if you remember, CMRPC actually wrote the grant for us. We do have monies in the grant for some administration for CMRPC to be doing some of the reporting and things that the state is going to require, so that will take off some of the load from Peter having to do some of that. So I did ask Andrew to let me know what his part is, so we can make sure we can coordinate and Peter gets assistance on the grant.
Ms. McGrath?
Through the chair, if either one of you could answer this, are we gonna be doing this at the same time the state's reconstructing the road, or are we gonna have it in the ground before the state reconstructs the road?
The last time that I had a conversation with Mass DOT, it was their hope that we would actually get it in the year before they do theirs, so that it'll have time to settle. So we'll be moving as quickly as we can. When I started filling out the contract, I put in there that we wanted to start the project for January. We need to get a signed contract and ready to go with the state on that grant before we can even start the design. So nothing we do right now would be reimbursable. So that's our first thing. As Peter mentioned, we did meet with Aquarion, and we've made it very clear with them that this is a fast track for an agreement with them. We need to have that by February because the state's not going to release money for design until we can actually say we've got water.
Okay.
So,
Again, it's all moving forward in a positive direction,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of good things coming in the next
A
year.
lot.
So. And the last thing I started working on was looking into Buffinville area again for a public water supply well. It seems with ExxonMobil extending the water line down to the middle school, with the bond bill that we have and the funds sitting there, if it's ever going to be able to be done, now is the time. So I had a meeting with Tim Russell at the Army Corps of Engineers, and there was no big red flags that were waved at that time, so that was promising. I talked to Robin about that, and she made a follow-up phone call to Muriel Stone at the DEP. Very preliminary, and again, no big red flags, no huge obstacles we're gonna have to get over at this time.
Right.
So it's definitely worth, in my mind, just keep taking small steps and I'm gonna try and keep bringing it up as often as possible so that hopefully if someone with a stumbling block, if there's any objects in our way, I'll hear about them sooner than later. So we don't put a bunch of time into this and all of a sudden we get there and all of a sudden it's one small thing that was missed, so. It's definitely promising, it's exciting, and hopefully it's something that we can get done at this time, so.
Absolutely. It's just amazing that there's so much going on, so much happening all at once.
Yeah.
I don't envy you, but welcome, we're happy that you're here because it takes a lot of effort to do this, so thank you. Any questions for Mr. Boria?
No, thank you very much for bringing
Mr.
the
Swenson?
report.
Just a comment, if I could.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming up and presenting this to us. I can't remember the last time we had someone from Water Sewer come up on their own initiative and give us an update on this, so it's good to know what's happening, I just really appreciate.
You bet, I'm
putting
glad
this
to be here.
together and bringing it up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also just get another opportunity to send it out to the residents as well.
Okay.
So thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
nice
Thank you,
night.
Mr.
Merry
Boria.
Christmas to you guys.
Merry Christmas.
All right. We'll now move on to our 7 o'clock appointment. By the clock, I go by one back. 3 minutes late, my apologies. But the first one is the fire chief interview with Curtis Meskis. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir, you're scheduled to hold the fire chief interviews tonight. We've scheduled them as follows: at 7 p.m. Kurt Meskis, and at 8 o'clock Ed Knopf. Human Resource Director Lorenz has compiled a list of questions and will provide them to you tonight. So,
Thank you. And as Ms. Lorenz hands that out,
do you want
a
to
brief-
come up and do you want to say anything? So the process, regarding the process?
So along with the set of questions, I have the application materials for both candidates.
Hey, I'm sorry. Mr. Singer, could you please put your phone on mute? Mr. Singer?
Hello.
Can you please put your phone on mute? Thank you. Continue, Ms. Lorenz.
Yes. So I have the questions for the candidates along with their application materials for you. There'll be a rating sheet for each of them. So you can certainly review the questions and go through how you will go through the questions, and then at the end rate each of them as a 1 or a 2, and then we will go through and tally them up and then come back.
And then the board will take whatever action
Yep.
they
Exactly.
deem necessary.
Exactly.
So thank you. If you want to hand out those questions, I'll just give a brief overview. We'll make sure both candidates have the at least an hour as originally scheduled. We'll each ask questions
Thank you.
one at a time. We'll go clockwise, each asking the same questions. I asked the board not to ask any questions that are not on the list, but after the questions have been asked, please feel free to ask any kind of
Thanks.
clarifying questions related to any answers the candidates make. And then each candidate will have a chance to give a opening statement, and since we have a longer time to have this discussion, I welcome many clarifying questions and the candidate to take as much time as they need. So with that, Mr. Meskis, if you want to start out with your opening statement.
Good evening, and it is an honor and a pleasure to sit before a board again seeking the position of fire chief. Approximately 12 years ago, I sat in the same seat before another board seeking this position, and Chief Cloutier was made chief, and that was the right decision at that time for the community. I had some issues, and I have dealt with those issues, and I was not ready at that time to assume this role. But now I believe I am, 10-plus years later. I was happy for Chief Cloutier when he was made chief, and I would be equally happy for Deputy Knopf if he was made chief. I know that when we get to this point, it becomes very difficult because you're not asking the worst three candidates to come before you. You have what is considered the best. I've been a member of the Charlton Fire Department for 36 years as a call member, and that means that I respond on my own time with my own will and obtained all my own training. I worked with the fire department as we moved along, and we realized in my tenure that when I got on, the requirement was pay $1.50 a month dues to the association, get issued a rubber coat, an aluminum helmet, and some bright red ball gloves. Certainly not NFPA compliant at this time. And, oh, by the way, go that way. So over my tenure on the department, I worked with other members of the department, and we started our own recruit training program. And I taught building construction, amazingly enough, for that program for many years. And that program expanded to the district and was looked at as a model throughout the Commonwealth for firefighter recruit training for call departments. The district just gave up doing that. It became very cumbersome, but the academy in Stowe now offers a program for recruit firefighters for call people. So it's the Call Volley program is what it's called, which mirrors the full-time academy that we send all our full-time recruits to. I've been an assistant chief on the department for 21 years. I rose up through the rank over time. I was a captain. I got married. I left town. I resigned my position, came back and started over again. We need to continue the great growth that Chief Cloutier and other members of the department have brought forth over the years. We are in a very interesting transition period. Half of our staff is being paid for by a grant, which the town has contractual responsibilities to continue on some parts of that after in about a year. But we've already seen a decrease in injuries for that. We've seen the ability to do simultaneous calls, but we, like everyone else around us, has a very low callback rate. So I hope that if I was selected chief, I can take my experience from the building construction side, knowledge of the town, knowledge of how the town government works, because I've worked in the town hall for 15 years. I've worked with water and sewer. Those plans, when Ms. Noble asked about fire hydrants, I'm the one that reviews the plans for fire hydrant placement on behalf of the chief to submit back to the Water and Sewer Commission. I'm the one that looks at some of the hydraulic questions that the fire department has for water lines. We were successful in negotiating a couple of trade-offs for a water line that's going up St. Mary's Way, which is a subdivision street, very little known subdivision street by Cook's Farm, and we have a cute little one-port fire hydrant at the top of that short dead-end main for flushing purposes, but it will give us the ability to get 200 or 300 gallons a minute right there in that neighborhood. And I suggested to the water people at that time, instead of, because we ask for a hydrant at every intersection, there's already 2 hydrants near that intersection. I says, in lieu of doing that, we don't need 3 of them there. Maybe we could put a hydrant in Timber Valley, which was done, and that will improve the work of the water system so that they can flush the system properly. So those are some things that I have to say right now, and look forward to what comes next.
Thank you. And I would ask any clarifying questions, wait till the end, so please make note. So I'll start with number 1, we'll go around clockwise, so John, you'll have number 2, Ms. Noble, number 3, Mr. Spencer, you're number 4, and so on. Also, please note that Mr. Singer is here with us via cell phone. If you want to make a comment, I ask him to please address it to me, and he may be asked a question.
Hi, Mr. Singer.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So I will start. What makes you uniquely qualified to be the next Charlton Fire Chief?
Well, I've addressed some of that in my opening comments. My 36 years of service, my 21 years as an assistant chief. I've been to the National Fire Academy 6 times, which is a competitive process. You apply for a certain course, you show how that course is going to benefit you and your department or your community. There are something like 10,000 applicants for over the courses, and only about 2 or 3% actually get to go. I did have the town sponsor me one time. I was allowed to take paid time to go, but the other 5 courses I did on my own time. I also, long ago now, obtained Fire Inspector 1 and 2 back in the year 2000, before I was a building inspector, before we had, or just as we were having full-time people on the department, because there was a talk of having an inspector, and that would have gotten me an inspector role there. So I think that those things that I do on my own, and I continue to go to training on my own, and fulfilling my obligations as the building inspector for the community, shows my dedication and continued striving for knowledge and new ways, or sometimes re-seeing the old ways again, which are coming back. So,
Thank you. Mr. McGrath?
Kirk, could you describe what the term fire chief means to you? What should it mean to the members of the fire department?
Fire chief has 2 components. There's the incident command component, which is the senior most person running an incident, and the knowledge and the tactics and strategies to control an incident to a suitable outcome. The other component is a leadership management component. We have now 22 full-time people down there, mostly type A people. They want to do things, they all have a better way, and they all have a lot of energy. So those people need to be managed or helped to see that we can go forward, that their ideas are valued, but they have to work within the discipline and the requirements of how we present ourselves. Because the most valued thing that any fire department has is their reputation. And that lets us get into people's homes at their worst moments. And without a good reputation, we're not going to be able to serve our community.
Thank you. Ms. Noble?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please give us an example of how, through your supervisory action, you have established norms of behavior and standards of performance in your current or past work experience that promoted safety, professionalism, and respect.
So the Charlton Fire Department has a standard operating handbook, and I have worked on that handbook for 30 years. Originally, we just had some job descriptions, some basic functions of various positions, and now it is the Bible of the department. It sets forth basic expectations in Chapter 1. It talks about dignity statements. It has our serving with honesty, integrity, and compassion, our mission statement there. It has a 10-point ethics, I won't call it an ethics, a guiding principle statement that talks about when we will serve our customers before anything else is done, and ends up we will be nice. And we have that posted in our fire department. It's part of what we think of every day. It lays out the basic expectations for every member. That is that action they're going to take legal and ethical? Is it the right thing? Is it at the right time? And going through the rest of the book from there, we have expectations of what the duties of the chief are, the deputy chief, the captains and lieutenants, what tasks they need to perform daily or weekly. We have operating procedures for what happens if you go to a facility with a Knox box on it, what if you go to an alarm, and it's a residence, and you might have to make access. When do you make access? And things like, don't do any more damage than you don't have to. Try the door. That's worked many times.
Don't break the window.
Don't break the window. But if there's smoke in the building, all bets are off. Because we're there to try and mitigate that incident quickly and correctly. It has an EMS chapter in it that deals specifically with EMS and is reviewed annually by the state EMS inspectors, which just happened. And we continue to work on that. Captain Babineau and I are working on it, and we're working on trying to lay out, there's probably 10 basic types of fires. A house fire, a car fire, a dumpster fire, because we have a young department now. We just put on 9 people. There are people on this department that are younger than the time I've been on the department. I have a hat that says old fart. So I've worked on that, we continue to work on that, and we will always have to work on that. And we just finished a 10-year revision on it, because when we went to 24/7 operations several years ago, a lot of things that we had in there no longer were the way we operated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Swenson?
Kurt, I think you touched on this in your opening statement, but if you could elaborate a little more and give an example of a vision you created and the steps you took to implement it. And kind of as a follow-up, if you'd also touch on how did you deal with any resistance and what'd you get for results?
A vision that I created. Long ago, Mike Mahan, recently retired assistant chief, the first guy I met when I came into the fire department years ago, we were standing around going, when we become chief, we're gonna do this, and when we become chief, every firefighter does that, and some firefighters continue to aspire to be chief, and some firefighters say, no, I wanna be a line firefighter, and I'm happy there. And we started taking classes, and it was different than what people had done before. So we went to a thing called the attack pumper concept, which required the whole department to change, because we come, as Ms. Noble realizes, without hydrants, with a limited amount of water on our apparatus, 1,000 gallons, 1,500 gallons. So the answer was, we'll pull one line off of every truck, and when we all run out of water at the same time, then we'll scratch our heads. So that change put us into a place where we do rural water supply. And sometimes the answer is you have to wait out the older guys. Sometimes you can persuade the older guys that this really works. Sometimes by doing it and showing it, it shows them that it works. Because that truck's got a 1,200 gallon a minute pump on it. I can use 1,200 gallon a minute pump to its extent instead of 250 on 6 trucks. And that's helped us in the way we attack fires and all those changes that come with that, different nozzle selections. And that's us type A people down there going, there's a better way, there's a better way, these guys are doing it. And with the internet now, we're swapping videos all over the place, and somebody's coming up with a new idea all the time, and that goes to an earlier question, keeping us from going like this, but sort of going like this and evaluating it, so.
So when you tried to implement that attack pumper program, did you get resistance from that with the guys that
Oh, yeah.
fought it? And other than waiting out the old farts, how did you handle that?
So, we trained with it, we showed that it worked. The young guys are always willing to try new things. He explained how it works. And eventually it comes along.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give the next question. Mr. Meskis, we'd like to talk to you about training and education from both an individual and organizational perspective. Can you tell us what you've done to develop yourself and your department? I know you touched on this, but if you can elaborate a little more.
So myself, I have a fire science degree, a bachelor's from Anna Maria. I did that As an older student, I started with an associate's degree from Quinsigamond College. The associate's track, a 2-year track, is a lot of tactics and strategies and company officer stuff. As you move into the next 2 years, there's more code enforcement, legal and management issues. And I was allowed at that time to take a couple of master level courses, and the one I picked to take was Incident Command, or ICS system, which at the time hadn't become the required national norm under decree from the president, but was what everybody was working towards. So that's what I've done for myself. For the department, I'm trying always to shed knowledge in what I know, because I don't want to take all this knowledge with me. You know, we just built a brewery in town, and it's a very large building, and it has a limited water supply. It has the water supply that it requires. But a question was said, well, wait a minute, if there's only 700 gallons a minute there for the sprinkler system, and I want to set up the tower, there's not enough water. Can't we make them put more in? And no, that's not what the rules say. But I could relate to these people that had these questions, that if we're beyond what the sprinkler system can control, we've got a bigger problem. So when discussions are had, little coaching or little practical relations to what's happening out in the world there are what helps them learn and helps the curiosity be satisfied.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath?
Kurt, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the fire service over the next several years? Excuse me, and what specifically needs to be done by our fire department to help address those challenges? What support or resources do you feel will aid you in being a successful fire chief in this department?
I think there's like 3 parts to that question.
Yeah, I'll repeat it as you need.
Okay, so let me try the first part, I think is what do we see for problems? The problems that scare me the most or concern me the most are the ones we don't know exist. There was a move afoot to go to community paramedicine, which was putting paramedics out doing house calls. It was coming from the West Coast. It was like, oh, this sounds like a great idea. And we knew it was coming, but there was some pushback from nursing and hospitals about that. But I read an article the other day where there was a study done that in communities that have Uber or those ride-sharing services, they were seeing a 7% drop in ambulance calls. That's interesting. Why? Why? Because people, when they get in the back of our ambulance, we have a set of protocols that say you take them to the nearest appropriate facility. We don't take them into Worcester sometimes. We don't take them here. But if you get in an Uber, you can go where you want. And they often need transportation. If Uber came into town and we saw a drop in ambulance service calls, we're using ambulance receipts to pay for some of our costs. Some change that we don't know about that would cut down on the number of ambulance calls we do and the corresponding receipts is the one we don't know about and could cause us a lot of problems. What do I see as the challenge that we face every day? Enough staffing. Now, we are now up to 5 people per shift. We're 20-some people, 22 people, line people. Every one of them gets about 2 weeks of vacation. We're already back down to 4 people per shift, because almost somebody's going to be off every day. We don't have a high turnout on callback. We do recall. Contract says that we have minimum manning staffing and that we have to provide a safe work environment. Ambulance goes to Worcester, recall for 2. Nobody's coming in. We get the big fire, the fire with 4. We were lucky the other night. I did a fire with 8. maybe 12. It was a Wednesday night. But we've done calls where it's 4, and we're all interdependent on our mutual aid from neighboring communities. So something that makes us all play together all the time would be a really good move forward. It would help us all, and that might be even out of regional dispatch, which I know has been talked about. The dance is happening, but we haven't gotten there because we have a dispatch problem that we need to cure, because that single dispatcher that's sitting down in the police station can't answer the phones, talk on the radio, do EMD. Oh, and by the way, take care of that person at the window. So by having regional dispatch, we can have run cards and move-ups that are done automatically and put the closest piece there sooner. I think there was another part to that question, Mr. McGrath.
What support or resources do you feel will aid you in being successful fire chief in your department?
I think the town has made a great stride by hiring a human resources manager, because we're talking about 22 full-time people on the line, 3 supervisory personnel, and a host of 14 or 15 call people, and they all have issues. I have issues. Okay? And those issues need to be dealt with properly and consistently. So we've made that step. The other issue is continued funding so that we don't go back down when this grant goes away, because that keeps people from getting hurt. That allows us to put 2 or 3 people on an ambulance call, and that's what we run. We run an ambulance and a chase car, because back injuries are huge. Strains and sprains, and you put somebody out IOD, that's huge. But we can get that person if a second call, so we have 2 going, 3 going, and we get a second call, the person that's back at the station can now take the second ambulance, and this guy can now shift over here. But when we only have 3 on a shift, everybody suffers. We did a set of calls the other day. We had 4 calls within 2 minutes. We covered 2. We had to do mutual aid for that, and these were EMS calls. And one of them was an interesting call because they wanted to go to the Leahy Clinic, and that's not somewhere we go to. It was an emergency. I read the report. The guy should have gone to Harrington, but refused but wanted to go to Leahy, and we couldn't accommodate that, but we made arrangements with Vital and another service, and both of them says this guy needs to go to Harrington. So that's the judgment that we have to put into our firefighters to be able to solve those problems out there in the field.
Thank you. Ms. Noble?
Please describe what your first month in office here as the new fire chief would look like if you were chosen.
Well, my hair wouldn't turn gray because it already is. I hope it doesn't fall out. We will be in budget season. I will need to work with Ms. Goff, who's the administrative assistant down there, is very familiar with the budget. Deputy Chief Knopf, who is familiar with how the penalties and pains of the grant. We need to be able, like I said earlier, maintain the level of funding we have. And we need to say, we're not going to make any major changes now. But we need to be receptive, or I need to be receptive to the 30 guys that are coming in and go, Chief, you're the chief now, I want to do this, I want to do this, and I want to do that. And you have to poke them all into the program. And the program is that of service to the community. So it will be a whirlwind. I'm sure I'll be probably getting some phone calls from down here, because there's a lot of things that I know about down here as far as facilities maintenance, and we've been talking about those issues, Robin and I. I would like to divest myself from technology because this is a very full-time position down there. I need to divest myself from facilities management for the community so that I can focus on channeling, or really, we talk about often the chief steers the ship. I can turn that rudder all I want, but if the rowers aren't rowing in unison, I'm not going anywhere. So we need to make sure that they keep going. We've got 2 new guys that'll have to go to the academy. We have some other personnel issues that I'm aware of that we can't, talk about here, and we have to work our way through those. And like any other place that has someone new, everybody that got told no before seems to come back to see if the new guy's going to be consistent, or if I can sway the new guy. Happens to building inspectors, happens to planners, happens to zoning enforcement guys. So those are the things that I think are going to take up a lot of first month's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swenson?
Kurt, if you would, give us an example of you working through a difficult working relationship with an individual. What specific actions did you take to improve the relationship? What was the outcome? And along the same lines, how would you describe the most difficult work-related conflict you've had to manage?
Okay, I'll let you ask that again, so please.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Give us an example of you working through a difficult working relationship with an individual. What specific actions did you take to try to improve that relationship, and what was the outcome? Then along those same lines, would you describe the most difficult work-related conflict you've had to manage?
As a building inspector, I get to say no a lot, more than I want to. Zoning enforcement officer, same thing. People have great ideas, but zoning doesn't allow them. Sometimes I'm my own worst enemy because I get excited, I get pushed into a corner, and don't let personalities get involved. So over the years, I've had to tell people no. Had to send them to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Probably didn't explain that process properly. And got to the Zoning Board of Appeals and gave the person the due he needed. I've apologized. I've had to apologize more than once. We are all human, we do make mistakes, and I'm very conscious of it. Sometimes simple things like saying to someone, I'll get back to you, and in the hubbub of everything that's going on, I haven't done that. And just by doing that, just by saying, yes, I've acknowledged you, and I understand I'm talking about value of your property, and it's going to take me a little while to come to the right conclusion, is the right thing to do. As opposed to ignoring the person or perceivably ignoring the person, and perception is everything. If I'm ignoring that, if I haven't reached back out, it just sets everything up for going bad.
To that end, would you describe the most difficult work-related conflict you've had, and what did you do to resolve it? How did you work through it? With your jobs, it's probably a long list, huh?
People that don't want to be helped.
What do you mean by that?
They are as stubborn as I am sometimes. And we want to say yes. And we want them, we need them to bring us the information we need so we can say yes. But they resist. And they spend what seems like more time arguing about or discussing why they don't think they should have to do it than it would take them to do it. And I'm not allowed to design, but I can draw a little bit, and I can try and coach them, but sometimes those people that just don't want to be helped would rather yell and scream than do what needs to be done so they can get there.
And what's your process to deal with one of those, when you do encounter one of those people?
You have to keep talking to them. And you can't get caught up in the escalation. And sometimes it's the most, what seems to be the most innocent thing you thought at the time was not innocent to them.
Yep.
So it's another coaching thing. I was on a site today, and the contractor was asking some questions, and I had this discussion with him before, and he sort of saw the light, because I could, with the experience, I could say, look, we've built other buildings like this in town, and I think this is going to give you a better product, and it might be easier for you. But he's a very strong-willed individual, and he wants to argue the cost. So I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meskis, could you please describe a situation that you've dealt with that did not go as you intended?
We had a situation here at the town hall with fumes from the generator. Never been a problem. All of a sudden it became a problem. Didn't understand why it was becoming a problem. Board of Health was very concerned about that problem. Invited me down, short notice, to talk about the problem. Got me cranked up. And I said some things about some employees in the town hall that were incorrect, were inappropriate. As soon as the words came out of my mouth, I knew I had inserted both feet firmly. Left that meeting, wandered around for a few minutes. Went and saw Robin, told her about my foobarb, which she had already heard about, and made my amends the next day. It was not fair to those employees to say what I had said, and it was not professional of me, nor proper of me to act in that way.
As a follow-up, what did you learn from that incident, and what have you done differently as a result?
Don't get backed into a corner. Don't take a defensive position. And that there were issues in my life that I needed assistance with, that I sought help for, that's helped me greatly. I would not be sitting here if I continued down the path that I was going at that time. And that's one reason I'm thankful that I didn't get the chief's job last time around, because it could have been an embarrassment to myself and the community that none of us needed.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath?
Kurt, this is a long one. We're gonna do this piece by piece.
Okay.
So the fire chief is charged with administering collective bargaining agreements on behalf of the town, with the town administrator and the board of selectmen. And it's supposed to happen in a manner that fosters mutual trust and respect. Tell us about your experience with collective bargaining and dispute resolution.
I have not been directly involved in collective bargaining. I know that it occurs, and I know that both sides would like something. You were talking about an issue when I came in earlier. It shouldn't be an adversarial event. It should be of mutual respect for each side's needs and wants. The fiduciary responsibility set upon the community, but provide a safe workplace and working conditions for the employees. Having rules written down give both sides the roadmap of where they should be and how disputes of different types may come to resolution. But it always comes from understanding the problem and where we want to be. Next part.
Okay. How would you plan to implement change in a union environment while also building a sense of trust and teamwork within the department? And how have you told the firefighter no? How have you told the union no?
No, so my administrative assistant is part of the bargaining unit of the clerical union. She's a great employee. And I think we have great people down at the fire station. By each side understanding the rules and following them, I would hope that we didn't get to the point that we have to have a big conflict resolution. If the rule says that you must apply for vacation by a certain time in the year, that's what the rule says. And if everyone else has followed that and there is some leftover space, because here's another issue that we can see coming, with 22 people and all this vacation, we need to set some expectations that everybody's taking June off. And that may be the no thing. We have two guys that just came on, and their 6-month probationary period will come up mid-May, and they'll be vested with vacation. And that may be something that we have to do some bargaining, or we have to do something with, so that, because there's other senior members that are going to want to take time off in June. So collaboration probably is the answer. Discussion. Robin and I have had some great discussions about some issues that we're dealing with as far as some zoning issues and stuff, and trying to get to where both sides get a reasonable resolution.
Thank you. And Ms. Noble with the last question.
Finally.
Oh, thank you.
The fire chief serves as the incident commander for the town's emergency management, as well as overseeing the EM director. Please describe your experience relative to the comprehensive emergency planning and managing large-scale target hazards, including response plans for incidents.
So incident command is a chess game. And it's knowing how far ahead you have to request resources. I have fortunately, unfortunately, been the incident commander for several large fires in town, in the absence of the chief. So by having standard operating procedures that tells companies what they're gonna do automatically, by having our members that worked on multiple alarm run cards because they knew we needed them, gives them buy-in to our system because they helped create it, and takes certain loads off of it. When you talk about all hazards or all community, and I know we just got a grant to do some I don't, too many initials. We're the government, and we have too many acronyms. There are 3 tenets of the incident command system: life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. So life safety starts with my folks. I'm not putting them somewhere that is going to bring undue risk to them. Incident stabilization is doing what you need to do to stabilize that incident. Okay, you can't use the same word to do that. To control that incident to some objective, the building of origin. That's what happened at the mill. The resources that we had were not enough to attack that fire. And I had to make the decision that we were going to sacrifice that smaller building to save the larger. Property conservation is what can we do to inflict the least damage or limit the damage. So on a smaller fire, let's put some salvage covers down. Let's not rip and tear stuff. And that's a culture you have to instill in everybody that's working on a fire scene. If we had a hurricane and you rolled out the full emergency management director thing, all those books that we have where we have resources that may or may not have been updated for a number of years, they're constantly changing what resources are available. So that's a tough one, because we can't, if we have a hurricane that affects us, getting resources from Oxford, which was probably affected by that hurricane, is going to be tough. So Gordon Graham says predictable is preventable. If we can reasonably predict the most major hazard that we would have and how we deal with that, we can ramp this incident command system up with enough resources from the state, then the feds, to mitigate it. But there's a lot of chiefs that come to these. I did not run that mill fire by myself. I was the point man, but there were a number of other positions in the incident command system where all sorts of things were getting done that I didn't have to say, do this, do that. So a localized incident is relatively easy. A natural disaster is difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you. So those are all 11 questions. We have about 15 minutes left. Mr. Spencer, if you want.
I'd like to throw out one more question if I could.
I would ask that, since ahead of time we had these questions for each candidate, that you would ask both candidates this
I'll
question.
ask both candidates, yeah, it's relevant to both candidates.
Okay.
Okay? Kurt, in your discussion tonight, the notes I was taking, you said you have 22 full-time firefighters, 13 call firefighters, 3 supervisory positions. And I'd also say, by the nature of the beast, is you probably have the largest inventory of equipment of any town department. All that lends itself to an extremely challenging budget development process. So could you talk a little bit about your experience developing budgets and how you'd approach a budget the size of the fire departments?
Well, right now, the personnel costs for the department, including the grant money, as I figured it out, are about $2 million. We have $150,000 in expenses, another $100,000 in some other accounts and stuff like that. So we're talking about a budget that's 2.2, 2.5, somewhere in there. We have a dedicated member that's been assigned to equipment maintenance, trucks. And we're very front-loading the process now in preventative maintenance. And we were discussing this, I was discussing this with the member the other day, and I says, are we starting to see the rewards of that? Because we used to do the fix-it-when-it's-broke thing, and that leads to haphazard repairs and bad scheduling. So that's a big component in the budget, is maintaining what we have properly. Our ambulance costs, in speaking to Ms. Goff, even though we're doing a considerable increase in calls, we're going to do over 2,400 calls this year. 70% of them are EMS. We're going to bring in maybe $1.4 million in revenue from EMS. Surprisingly, our consumable costs haven't gone up exponentially. I was surprised that it
What would you define as consumable costs?
Band-Aids,
Oh, okay.
BDMs,
Okay.
all of those
Yep.
things, gloves, stuff like that. Even medications. They're very good down there. The medics are very good down there about making sure we don't get stuck with outdated medications. We either make sure they get on the front line so they get used up, or that we do that. So we're going to have to look at the historical data. We're going to have to look at what our replacement needs are, capital needs. We're going to need another engine soon. An ambulance a little while out. So you take the fixed salaries and you plug them in first. You take the vacation benefits and overtime costs from that, you plug that in, and then you have to take the data, which Ed Knopf got us a nice program, emergency reporting, for fire reporting. It was like, oh, you took my fire point away, which I got, but it's like this thing runs more reports than we know what to do with. So we can take that data and massage it into projections, So if we did 2,400 calls this year, from 1,900 next year, you gotta be careful of that, ooh, it went up this much, so it's gonna keep going like this. I'd see it sort of going like this. So you have to take all of that and put it in and say, okay, what, the grant has a fixed number next year, so we have that. It's the year after when it becomes us full boat. And as long as we can continue those ambulance revenues, we're pretty much 1.4 million, we're pretty much covering the line costs. As long as there isn't that hidden thing that Medicare falls out and we don't get reimbursed, or something, that's, like I said in the beginning, one of the scariest things is not knowing what you don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open up any more questions, I would give the opportunity for Mr. Singer. If you have a question you want to ask Mr. Meskis, I'll give you first shot.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Singer.
Any clarification questions for
Thank
the
you.
board?
Nope.
I have a couple. When you were answering question number 9, that's discussing a situation that you were dealing with that did not go as intended. One thing you mentioned was not responding or touching base and remedying that. Could you please give some more specifics on how you would approach that going forward? I know that communication is such a huge role as a fire chief.
I have to acknowledge immediately that I received the message. Make sure I understand the need.
And how would you do that?
I have to talk to the people right away. You know, as soon as possible. You know, even though it becomes a hectic day and I'm torn in many different directions, that 5 minutes that I didn't take would have been much better spent at taking that 5 minutes than me just going, okay, I'll figure this out and I'll let him know.
In your current role, have you been following that procedure?
Yes,
How has that been working out?
fine. It's sometimes, we can grow complacent of our own self, and it's a lesson sometimes you learn over and over again. I'm surprised at the number of times people say, oh, you got back to me so quickly, I was surprised. And that's a good surprise for them. You know, so.
Any more questions from the board?
I'd like to ask just a yes or no question.
Mr. Swenson?
Would you consider yourself good at delegating?
Yes,
I'll ask you a follow-up question. Why?
because there are people in the fire department that we have that do great jobs at the specific things they do. I'm not a medic. I know a little bit about being a medic. I know that they have protocols, and I know that that's the best person to put in charge of medications. I know that Brian Ouellette is doing a great job for us, doing equipment maintenance. I know that Dean Babineau is doing a great job at facilities maintenance. And when you give people these tasks, the authority and the resources to do them, they feel like they belong and they're contributing.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up with that, sparked something that is important to me when we're going through the police chief process about delegating and preparing people and giving them leadership opportunities and chances to develop as leaders. How would you approach that along the same vein of, taking those skills and specializations and using them for the department, but also training for leadership?
I think when you give someone the goal, the authority, and the resources, monitor as necessary, they're all going to grow. And that's going to challenge them. And if that goal is just elevated a little bit, it challenges them. And they want to be patted on the back. They wanted to be said thank you. And they're type A people down there. They want to do. And if you keep all that stuck in the corner office because you say, I'm going to keep all this knowledge to myself, nobody grows.
Thank you. Ms. Noble?
Just one quick question, maybe two quick questions. Something's coming to mind as I'm hearing you talk about the staff down there and the firefighters and the EMTs. Can you tell me how many women full-time firefighters we have, or EMTs?
Danny is full-time.
How many women?
She's one.
Danielle.
Danielle.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have 3 on-call EMTs at this time.
Okay, so the 3 on-call EMTs, are they actually employees of the town, of the fire department?
Yes, they are.
Are they full-time?
No, they're not.
So they're part-time?
Yes.
Are any of these individuals in leadership positions or supervisory positions?
No.
Can you tell me what you're going to do to address this discrepancy?
The member has to want to have the leadership position. Ms. Robinson, we had openings for lieutenant a while ago. I got her some books that she needed, and she was not interested in taking that responsibility. So they have to be willing. We can try and coach them to it. But if they don't want it,
So out of a 23-member fire department, we have 1 full-time female staff, and we have no women in any leadership positions, is what you're telling me?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Meskis, another question for clarification. When you're talking about a situation, they dealt with it, didn't go as intended, you mentioned that a way to do something different is not to get back in the corner and not to be on the defensive. Could you go into that a little more and explain how you would, prevent that from happening or go about trying to mitigate that?
You have to take deep breaths. And as you see, when I sometimes answer questions here, I'm slow and methodical. And that's keeping under control. Not that any of these questions are unexpected or pressuring or would back me into a corner, but by having that, trying to maintain that demeanor all the time keeps you from becoming the screaming incident commander that doesn't work out well. Keeps me in the right frame of mind so that I treat people with the respect they deserve and try and understand their problem and explain my constraints.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'll give you an opportunity to provide a closing statement.
Thank you very much. I would love to be your next fire chief. I know that you're going to be faced with a difficult decision. Ed and I respect each other, and we will continue to respect each other no matter what happens. Season's greetings.
Thank you.
Mr. Meskis.
Thank you, Kurt.
We have a 1-minute recess to get water. And we are back from our recess, and we have Mr. Knopf here as part of our 8 o'clock appointment for the fire chief interview. We're starting around 7 past according to the clock I see right now. You'll have about an hour, same as the other candidates, to answer the questions. We have 12 questions to ask. We'll each take a turn at asking you questions. There are some built-in follow-up questions, and there'll be time at the end for more follow-ups and a wrap-up question. Sure. Mr. Singer is currently joining us via remote. He's unfortunately sick. We don't want to get sick, so we appreciate him still being here to listen and ask questions. We have your submitted information and records, and we'll start with your opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Ed Knopf. I'm a resident of Charlton for the past 18 years. I have a lovely wife and 2 children who keep my life very busy. I've been on the fire department since 2001, kind of my 3rd career. It was a chance meeting with the former chief that got me involved. Since 2001, I was a callman for 6 years, earning the rank of call lieutenant. In 2006, 2007, I was afforded an opportunity to become a full-time firefighter with the town of Charlton. And since then, I've held pretty much every rank within the department, up to currently deputy chief.
Thank you very much. And like I said, we'll each take a turn answering questions, asking questions, and I'll start with the first one.
Sure.
What makes you uniquely qualified to be the next Charlton Fire Chief?
Well, I believe part of the answer that I just gave you is I've had the unique opportunity to hold pretty much every position within the department, right from call firefighter right up to my current position. I have knowledge of what a call firefighter is in a combination department, what a full-time firefighter in the department is, and I know what the differences are. And there are some differences. I also have both administratively and on the union side, working knowledge of the CBA. I've been active when I was a captain. I was part of the executive board that actually worked with the town on the last contract. And I believe those things, knowing both sides of the table is a big advantage in being able to deal with those negotiations. I believe I've shown in my career that I am nothing but loyal to the fire department. I've been able to, with the opportunity given to me by Chief Cludia, the opportunity to write some grants for the department to get some well-needed equipment and manpower. And I believe I have a strong vision for the future of the department. I'm looking to take what Chuck Cludia produced in his time here and move it forward. And I believe I have a lot more to offer to the department and the town.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath.
Ed, could you describe what the term fire chief means to you? What should it mean to the members of the fire department?
What it means to me, and I go back to, the fire chief is more than a member of the fire department. He's a active member in the community. And the fire chief needs to deal with and relate to all facets of the community, whether it's a nonprofit organization, a school, obviously the town and the town board. There's many roles that the fire department, fire chief plays within the community. Within the fire department, the fire chief is, he's the ultimate authority, and he's the planner and the forecaster for where the department needs to go and grow.
Thank you. Ms. Noble.
Good evening. Please give us an example of how, through your supervisory action, you have established norms of behavior and standards of performance in your current or past work experience that promoted safety, professionalism, and respect.
I believe in any leader in any organization shows and develops respect by earning it. It's, especially in the fire service, it amounts to, use a cliche, it's amount to walking the walk. And if I expect you to behave in a certain manner, I better be exhibiting those behaviors, or else it's a fallacy. I've gone on record with probably everybody within the department when they first come on, and I've told them, I'm not here to be your friend. That's not my responsibility to be your friend. I have functions that are more important than being your friend. If that happens, great. But my role is to provide my members with the opportunity to grow, the opportunities to train, the opportunities to develop, give them the tools they need to perform their job, and then ultimately, I need to get them home every single morning. That's what the role is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swenson.
And if you would, can you give us an example of a vision that you created and the steps you took to implement it? And then kind of as a follow-up, how did you deal with any resistance that you might have encountered along the way?
Kind of close to home in this office here. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the staffing grant that we just got approved and working on right now. It was a vision of looking at it and seeing that where we were as a fire department with our staffing at that time was not producing the desired results that I felt the town deserved and needed. And as a byproduct of that, we were both mentally and physically wearing down our firefighters. So through the federal government with the FEMA grants, the opportunity is there to have them assist us. And I can actually remember talking to you at, I believe it was Ralph's, no, it wasn't Ralph's, it was Mike Mahan's
Mike Mahan's.
retirement party, and you asked me what I was going after next, and I said staffing. And it was something that I'm very passionate about, because the reasons were there to show you that if we were able to perform at these staffing levels, we could give you a product that, one, the town could be proud of, two, the town could rely on, and three, give our firefighters the opportunity to better themselves through training, keep them healthier. And it wasn't always, there was a lot of give and take, there was a lot of, I'm not gonna say there was a lot of pushback, but I know what the board's responsibility is, and the bottom line is it's the funding for the town and those needs. And I understand that it's a big commitment. And at some point, that commitment's gonna have to be a decision.
There was a little resistance, and if you would, just talk for a minute about how you dealt with that. I mean, we all know there were concerns what would happen at the end of the grant and what the long-term implications would be and so on and so forth.
Sure. Well, initially, I was involved, I had the opportunity to be involved in a chief financial officer class. And part of the program was to develop a research project to produce and present. So, you know, they requested that you do something close to your home and, you know, something that meant something to you. So obviously, with the passion that I had for the staffing, it was a no-brainer to go and do that. And, you know, there was a lot of research involved. You know, it was a 50-some-odd page report on what we were doing to our firefighters with our current staffing, the services that I felt we were lacking to the town, and ultimately, you know, through research papers that are out there and NFPA standards that are out there, I could give credit to an individual in the back room regarding some reports that were put out there regarding manpower and staffing and the amount of time it took on an incident, you know, just a basic chest pain incident, and the differences that you saw with 3-person crews to 4-person crews to 2-person crews, which a lot of the times at that time, that's what we were running. And in my eyes, we were doing a disservice to the people of this community. One, because it took us longer with the lack of manpower. And two, it was the desperate feeling that we may not be able to answer that second call. So, you know, it became an almost luck of the draw type of thing, that if your phone call was 10 seconds later than somebody else's call, you were looking at an ambulance time of maybe a half hour because, one, we didn't have the staff in-house, two, we don't know where the mutual aid's coming from. So that was the driving force in that program and going after that grant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knopf, we'd like to talk to you about training and education from both an individual and organizational perspective. Can you please tell us what you've done to develop yourself and your department?
Sure. I have an associate's degree in fire science. I have a bachelor's degree in economics. I'm currently working on another degree in fire science. And I have aspirations to do public administration to continue my education. So I believe that once you stop learning, you might as well pack it in, because you're gonna be an anchor to the department. As far as being active in training, I'm a member of the District 7 Training Committee. So obviously I have deep beliefs in the value of training. I was a member of I was the dive team coordinator, who was responsible for overseeing the district's dive team and working with my assistant in getting the training necessary there. I've also been the training officer for the town of Charlton's fire department for the last 10 years, who oversees all training that takes place within the department. So training is something that's very near and dear to me, and I believe it's what makes us work. I've always said our job isn't to answer the calls. Our job is to be ready for the next call, because we don't know what the next call is. So that's why we train, and we should train every day.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath?
Ed, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the fire service over the next several years? And what specifically needs to be done by our fire department to help address those challenges? So that's the part one. And if
Okay.
I have to repeat it, I will. But and what support or resources do you feel will aid you in being a successful fire chief in this department?
I think right now the biggest challenge that the fire service faces is cancer. And what we can do going forward, one, to identify what's causing. Obviously, the environments we work in are a big part of that. So we, as a collective service, need to identify ways that we can minimize that exposure. And I think we're doing a good job. It comes down to real basic taking care of yourself. Wear your mask when you're in a fire. Wear your mask when there's hazardous conditions. We've taken steps within the department over the last couple of months. We've put decontamination wipes on all the apparatus, so that after a call, guys can wipe down. Big thing is getting that stuff off their hands and off their face, off their exposed body parts. We tell them, shower when you get back. Make sure you get the stuff off right away. Shower up, get ready for the next call. So there are things that we're looking at to improve that. I would say right now the biggest issue we have within the department is we don't have a gear extractor, which is basically an industrial washer and dryer system to get our gear cleaned in the appropriate manner. And to follow up your question, what are you going after next? I'm going after a gear extractor.
Thank you. Ms. Noble?
Describe what your first month in office here as the new fire chief would look like if you were to be chosen.
I think right now, the first month would be about establishing my administrative staff. Right now, it's me and only me. So I think putting people in place that can take on those responsibilities as a deputy chief and as a fire inspector, and I want to build a team that's going to bring the fire department to the next level. So the first month would be concentrating on looking to put that administrative staff in place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swenson?
This is question 8, chapter 1. Can you give us an example of your working through a difficult working relationship with an individual? What specific actions did you take to improve the relationship, and what was the outcome?
I don't know if I go so far as a difficult relationship. When I first became a full-timer, there was an officer in place that did things differently than my line of thinking, I would say. It was just a difference of opinion more so. But as a firefighter, I have to understand that he's the one that's in charge. He's the officer in charge. So in dealing with, I would say the biggest thing he lacked was consistency in his actions. So in dealing with that, I had an understanding of what he was looking for out of myself and my partner, and that's what I work towards, is I'm going to give him what he wants and what he expects for the course of the day, understanding that, you know, even in our service, things change. So was it a real difficult relationship? No, I don't think I didn't really have any animosity to him. It was just you didn't know what to expect on the next call, because it was always something different. So we worked through it, and that's what we do.
Fair enough. Chapter 2. Would you describe the most difficult work-related conflict you've had to manage? And what did you do to resolve the conflict, and if anything, what would you do differently now?
It's a difficult conflict. Sounds like such a negative term, but it's,
Well, I mean,
we deal
theory,
with conflict every day.
You guys are a bunch of guys locked in pretty tight quarters and get to be pretty close. I mean, I think it's only natural that over time.
There's I believe that, there's disagreements in there, and in a leadership position, I'm not at all adverse to dealing with conflict. I believe you need to deal with it as quickly as it starts. Because if you let it sit, you let it grow, and it festers, well, now you've got a problem that's probably out of your scope. And it becomes more than just a conflict. It becomes a problem. And I've always had the belief that if there are disagreements, the way to work it out is whoever's got the difference of opinion needs to have a sit down and have a conversation about it. And then if that usually works it out 9 out of 10 times. However, if it goes beyond that within the organization, well, then we get the chain of command involved. So I'm a firm believer in that the best way to deal with a conflict is a face-to-face with this person. And talking behind somebody's back is not the answer. It's never the answer. Because now it's hearsay, and now it's he said, she said. So as far as dealing with conflict, I believe in a direct approach, and that's a face-to-face.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knopf, could you please describe a situation that you dealt with that did not go as you intended? And I have a follow-up once you finish that.
Within the job or in anything?
Anything. Just a situation that did not go as you intended.
I mean, I can go back a long time ago. When I was a youngster, looking at a baseball career as a possibility. And what I dealt with was I wasn't the coach's son type of thing. I was the guy on the team, and I got overlooked for some things. It frustrated me, and I don't believe I handled it in the correct manner. What I should have done was probably look to go out and prove myself. And in Instead, I looked at it as, well, I can't play this game because I'm at a disadvantage, I'm just gonna walk away. And I've always regretted that going forward, because you always look back and it's what if.
And you touched upon this as a follow-up. What did you learn from that, and what would you have done differently?
And I think that's exactly it. It was the what if, and you're always wondering that in the back of your head. I think I would have approached it differently, and I think I would have, okay, now you're giving me something to shoot for now. Now it's another obstacle that I have to overcome. And if I had to do it all over again, and if I could go back in time, that's where I would have went. I would have taken the obstacle head on and proved my point.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath.
This is a two-chapter question. The fire chief is charged with administering collective bargaining agreements on behalf of the town administrator and board of selectmen in a manner that fosters mutual respect, trust and respect. Tell us about your experience with collective bargaining and dispute resolution.
Well, as I mentioned in my opening, one of my opening statements is that I've been on both sides of the table. Now being an administrator, I understand that that's the contract that we've put in place for the union members. Prior to getting on the admin staff, I was the president of the union, so I was the lead spokesman the last time we sat down with the town and Ms. Craver. I understand both sides of the fence, and my philosophy has always been, it's what's fair and equitable. It's not let's get what we can out of this. It needs to be fair and equitable. It's a working agreement to provide the best opportunity for the members to succeed and the town to be able to fund what they need to fund. So that's always been the way I approached it. Let's look what's fair and equitable here, and let's not be outrageous with what we're asking for. And I've had meetings with members and said that's not what's going to take place, because that's, in my eyes, that's not right.
So the next part of the question, I believe you've given us the answer. It's give us an example of your ability to clarify management's interest while understanding and bridging over to the other side's interest.
Yeah, like I said, I think my experience is advantageous here. I've played the part of the union president, and I've dealt with contract situations. I've dealt with grievances, and whether or not to move them forward or not as a president of the union. I've also had grievances come on the chief's desk, and my job was to investigate the grievance. So I understand everything that's involved with it. And again, my take on it is, I'm going to gather the information, I'm going to process the information, and then we're going to make a rational decision here. And whether or not it warrants discipline or it warrants a statement, then we go forward with that. If I find that if it's not something that needs to be pushed forward, then I'm not going to recommend that it gets pushed forward.
Mm-hmm. So, and then the other thing is, how would you plan to implement change in the union environment while also building a sense of trust and teamwork within the department? And how have you told a firefighter no, and how have you told the union no?
Directly. And again, I go back to the previous answer, is I've had people come up to me with grievances, and okay, what are the facts? Give me your statement. Now I'm going to get the other statement from the other side to see what's what. And I'm going to ask people that were involved with it. I believe in a thorough investigation of everything that goes on. If there was a wrong, let's take a look at it, and let's make sure it doesn't happen again. and we move on. I think as far as the relationship between the administrative staff and the union, I don't think our relationship is all that bad. I mean, I'm only a year and a half removed from, or almost 2 years removed from being the union president. I've had good working relationships with everybody in the union, and I think I respect them and they respect me, and they know after the 16 years that I've been in the department, most of those guys know what I'm about, and I'm pretty straightforward, and I'm no nonsense. We'll have conversations, we can disagree, but we're gonna correct what we need to correct and move on.
Thank you. Ms. Noble with the penultimate question.
The final question.
Second to last question.
Okay, second to last question. The fire chief serves as the incident commander for the town's emergency management, as well as overseeing the EM director. Please describe your experience relative to comprehensive emergency planning and managing large-scale target hazards, including response plans for the incidents.
We in the fire service have been integrated into the incident command system since day one practically, where we develop the command structure of any incident, and the way the incident command system works is we can build it out as far as it needs to, depending on the size of the incident, or at the very basic level of a simple ambulance call, whoever's in charge of the patient is the incident commander for that. So it's always in play, it's ingrained in every incident we go to, we adapt to the incident command system. As a captain, I played a more operations type role. I was doing the work with my crew. As an administrator now, I'm either directing people what to do, or I am in a safety mode, and I am watching to make sure that things are being done safe and nobody's getting put into a dangerous position needlessly. So as far as emergency management, I mean, understanding that the role is part of the fire chief's responsibilities. And when I became the deputy chief, I've kind of engrossed myself with it. I've attended an emergency preparedness conference in Worcester, a 3-day conference. I've participated in some drills and events with them. And I understand the role, because at the penultimate incident, you know, we've had the tornado that went through here, and the resources that were needed in that, you know, from here to Springfield was immense. And the only way that gets accomplished is through the emergency management system using the incident command system. That's the only way it happens, because everybody knows what their roles are once they're brought into the scene and into the situation. They're assigned a task, get the task done, and we move on. Operational periods.
Thank you. Mr. Swenson, last question.
If these numbers are correct, I believe there are 22 full-time firefighters, around 13 call firefighters, small supervisory staff, and you probably have the largest fleet of equipment and gear of any department in the town, which can be very daunting from a budgetary standpoint, planning, developing budgets and that. Can you talk a little bit about your budgetary experience and how you deal with budgeting going forward?
I have a financial background in, I was an economics major in college, spent 10 years working at a major New England bank. I was responsible for large insurance company accounts, that had to be reconciled to the penny. So I think that background will help me tremendously in the budgetary process. And I understand the fire department's budget is personnel and equipment. That's what makes the majority of our budget. And we are in a situation right now with our vehicles that we're in pretty good shape. You know, now it's basically upkeep and maintenance. There's no real, knock on wood, major things coming down the road for our equipment. In dealing with personnel, I think where we are right now, and this all goes back to, we always have to ask the question to the public and to the board. What level of service do you want us to provide? That's what ultimately drives our budget. What I'm here to do is to educate you on the impact of reductions and what that may impact as far as our service is concerned. And that's what to me, that's my primary function as far as the budgetary process is. You can come to me and say, we need 10% cut, we need a 5% cut. Well, my job is to educate you what that means as far as service that we can provide. We've run the last 5 years prior to the budget very lean, extremely lean. And it impacted us, and it impacted the service that we could provide to the town. We had numerous injuries on duty. We've had the inability to answer calls. But going forward with the adds to staff now, our call volume is probably going to top out around 2,450, 2,500 this year, which is the highest that we've ever done. We're doing more calls because we have more staff, and what we're finding is other towns are now looking at us to help them because we can provide a second ambulance if they need it, but we're also maintaining our level of service here in the town. So I think within the budgetary process, you know, as my long-winded answer here, I'm the one that is going to be there in front, educating the town, because that's what my role is, to provide you with the impacts of budget cuts, budget gains, what we can do with more staff, with less staff, and that's what my function is, I believe, in the budgetary process.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have about 25, 30 minutes for follow-up questions and a final statement. I'll ask Mr. Singer, give Mr. Singer the opportunity to ask the first follow-up question. Mr. Singer?
I'm good, just like before. Thank you.
That's it? Thank you, Mr. Singer. All right, does anyone on the board have any other questions? Mr. Swenson?
I'm just going to ask my yes or no question. Are you good at delegation?
Very good at delegation.
That's my follow-up. Why?
I'm not a one-man show, and there's a couple of reasons behind delegation. I can't do it all, and I don't want to do it all, and I want to develop my department and the members of that department moving forward, because I'm replaceable, and I need somebody going forward to take the reins and get this department moving in the same direction that we've been trying to move for the last 10 years.
Thank you.
Ms. Noble?
In discussing staffing, can you tell me how many female employees you have on staff at the fire department?
I have one full-time firefighter,
Mm-hmm.
and I have one Well, one call firefighter, but I also have EMTs. I have 4 or 5 EMTs that come in on a call basis.
Are any of these women in leadership positions or supervisory positions within the fire department?
The full-time firefighter runs our SAFE program.
What is the SAFE program?
SAFE program is a program developed through the Department of Fire Services, which assists in educating the public about fire safety. We're primarily focused with the senior citizens in the community and the children in the community. We go into the schools. So every year she is responsible for a budget. She writes the grant in order to receive funds from the Department of Fire Services on a yearly basis. And she runs a fantastic program with the kids and with the seniors.
Okay, have you done anything to encourage her to move on further in her career?
As her company officer, not such a long time ago, I have consistently encouraged her to seek opportunities in a leadership position.
Okay.
I thought she has all the tools necessary. That doesn't mean she can step right in and do it, but I think she has the capability to be a leader in the organization. And she's an informal leader in the organization. She's a senior firefighter on her group, so she's basically the second in charge for a group. If the officer happens not to be there, she runs the show. And she did that when I wasn't there, when I was the group officer.
So then out of 22 full-time firefighters, you have one woman firefighter?
That's correct. We, within the last year, we lost one to a neighboring town. She sought employment elsewhere. That's originally where she was from, so it was a move back home.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. From your answer to number 1 about what makes you uniquely qualified to be the Charlton's next fire chief, you mentioned continuing retired Chief Cloutier's vision. What specifics of that vision do you plan on following, and what differences do you have?
Well, I'd like to think that I was a big part of taking his vision to where he felt comfortable enough to say, it's time for somebody else to take over. So the one thing that I take from him is, again, we talk about the delegation and stuff. He provided us with opportunities, me specifically, to perform. And that's something any individual would look at as an opportunity to excel. The greatest thing that he provided to me was his trust and his belief that I would end up doing the right thing and getting whatever the job was done. That's what I hope to continue going forward. I'm looking to enhance a mentoring program within the department. As I said before, the greatest gift that I could ever give this department is leaving it better than when I got here. And that's what my focus is.
Can you give some specifics on how you would enhance the mentoring program?
Sure. It's about setting a plan for those particular individuals, and I'll use the group officers as direct reports to see what their goals are, if they wish to continue and hopefully go up the ladder. And it goes down to having a sit down, developing a plan of action for them and what they need as the base of moving forward, classes, training opportunities, my experiences. I think that's all included in all of that. And I would get them to do the same with the people in their group. We've got a lot of young individuals on our group, on our department now, mid-20s. There's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm there, and we need to make sure that we take that enthusiasm and point it in the right direction and give them the opportunities to grow and develop.
Thank you. For your answer for question number 8, which explains working through a difficult working relationship and about the outcome, and the most, and also went on to talk about the most difficult work-related conflict. Could you? I know you, at the time, didn't have a specific example. Do you have? Can you think of a specific example of a conflict and how you work through that? Like the most difficult work-related conflict. I know you mentioned speaking in generals.
With that, in that particular instance, I'm not sure I can give you a specific example, but what I'll give you is just, we had a difference in the way the work needed to be done and what needed to be completed and how we were gonna operate we were a group, we were a 3-man group. So, again, I have to understand what my role is as the junior firefighter on the group. I take orders. So there was not an instance where I wasn't not gonna take an order unless I felt that I was in harm's way, obviously. And was never in a situation where I felt I was put in harm's way needlessly. But, again, differing ways of how to accomplish tasks, and was just something that we had to work out together. And ultimately, I knew what he wanted, so I would go and do it and get it done. And then we would avoid those conflicts.
Thank you. In your answer to talking about incident command, can you briefly describe some of your experiences specifically about incident command during the tornado? What was your role? What was your...
Well, my role at that time, I was still a junior firefighter. You know, I was a firefighter on the group. I actually happened to be working that day, so I was on the primary ambulance. But once we gathered everybody in, obviously we called everybody in, and the chief was sent out to be a commander on this side of 169, because Southbridge was essentially cut off from us because of the path of the hurricane. So he was placed in charge of this side of 169 in the Southbridge area. Obviously, the Southbridge chief was put in charge on the other side. And then we relied on our company officers at the time to basically handle whatever came in on this side of town. And we went everything to, you know, lightning strikes, trees down. We started doing searches in the Southbridge area where the tornado went through. So, you know, all inclusive. And then ultimately, we ended up sending a group out to Springfield to assist in the searches out there. And that was a district-wide.
Thank you. Are there any more follow-up questions? Mr. Knopf, if you'd like to give a closing statement, please do so.
Thank you. First, I appreciate the opportunity for giving me a chance to come and speak to you tonight. I believe I I am a qualified candidate for this position. I'm not going to say I'm the only candidate for this position, because my partner is definitely well qualified. But I believe I offer a more rounded background in order to lead the fire department, having been, again, a call firefighter, a full-time firefighter, a call officer, a full-time officer, and now a deputy chief. I've been on all sides of the fences within the organization, administratively, union-wise, collective bargaining. So I believe that, plus my educational background, provides me with the skills necessary to do this job. And that's really all I have to say, other than thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much for coming
Okay,
tonight.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
So now,
Thank you.
thank you, Ed.
What position?
Don't fall.
Careful there.
Thanks, Ed.
Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you very much.
My son is a second baseman.
Do we have that ranking sheet? Ms. Lorenz, do you have that ranking sheet? Did you provide that to me?
It's in the packet.
Oh, there it is. So I would recommend us to take a 10-minute recess while we finish the ranking, and get a chance to compile and also to use the bathroom or get any water. We'll be back in 10 minutes.
You want these?
Thank you. We are now back from our recess. Mr. Singer is still participating via remote participation. Mr. Singer, can you please say hi?
Hello?
Thank you. So we finished tabulating the results. Before announcing it, I wanted to offer the board wishes on whether you want to announce the scores first or to explain their rationale, reasoning, and their thoughts and opinions. Ms. Noble.
Through the chair. This was a very difficult decision. I put a lot of thought into it. I took the interview process extraordinarily seriously. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I found each candidate had strengths in extraordinarily different areas. However, I also felt that both candidates had weaknesses. The fire department is lacking definitive leadership at this moment, and I don't want to leave the fire department without leadership. In a public safety department, it's almost a military operation. You have to have that chain of command. And I'm very concerned about that. I would be remiss if I didn't say that. So while I gave my rankings to the personnel department, and they were calculated as such, I do have reservations with regards to this process.
Thank you. And as a reminder to the board, obviously, these are just scores. And it's up to us to take action. The action is to hire one of the two candidates or to continue on with the process in a different way. So as a board, that is what our decision here is tonight. And I will present the, obviously, after I read the numbers, please let me know if you want to say any comments. Mr. Meskis had an average rank of 1.8. Mr. Knopf had an average rank of 1.2. Personally, this was an extremely tough
The lesser
decision.
number.
This
Yes.
lesser number, so each selectman ranked a candidate 1 or 2. The 1 is the preferred ranking. I was really taken aback how sincere and, as Ms. Noble said, how uniquely qualified each candidate is. So it was not an easy decision, but I think both candidates would do a fantastic job as chief, and I would be comfortable taking action on this tonight. And obviously, this is now up to the board to take action, or recommend action. Yes,
Through the chair,
Mr. McGrath.
I'll make a motion to name Ed Knott as chief of the Charlton Fire Department.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Open up discussion. Mr.
I'm
Swenson?
just going to echo everyone else's words if I could. I thought both candidates were, I'd say both candidates exceeded my expectations. I mean, there are areas, like Ms. Noble said, everyone has their areas of expertise, but I think the overall level of candidate exceeded my expectations.
Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair, I'd just like to say that I think both candidates understand how important teamwork has been in to get the fire department to where they are right now. And I think both of them have had an extreme amount of input and work that they've put in to get it to where it is, and I truly appreciate that. I appreciate both of them coming forward.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, since this is remote participation, we'll go by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Ms. Noble?
No.
Mr. Singer?
Aye, but I do agree. I share Ms. Noble's concerns, but I will vote aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
David, are you staying for the meeting?
No, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
You going?
Yeah.
Take care, David.
All right, I'm going to shut down our high-tech
Ask you.
interstellar
Thank you, Mr. Singer.
communication system here.
At 9:28.
Okay.
See ya.
Can we do this one now so Jessica can go home?
Sure.
Jessica can go home.
Again, that was a grueling process. And it's just amazing how sincere both candidates are. But again, I'll give congratulations to Chief Knopf now. So congratulations again. If there's no objection from the board, I'd like to take up our item under other business, facilities tech versus custodians, since Ms. Lorenz can go home early.
And she can take her last
Early,
Oreo.
it's
won't she?
9:30.
Earlier.
Ms. Graber?
Yes, sir. We've received notice that Robert Duran, who we call Kirby, the town hall custodian, is leaving for another job with the Dudley Charlton Regional School District, and today was his last day. After review, we see a need for additional duties so that some of the duties of the building commissioner can be reassigned, allowing him more time to complete his main duties. After discussion of needs in conjunction with the building commissioner and Jessica from HR, Jessica has provided a job description for a facilities technician to replace the custodian position. We've added some facilities management duties suggested by Kurt Meskis to make the position more comprehensive in services provided to the town hall. It is recommended to not be the same position as the position in the library that remains as a custodian. And Jessica's recommendation, and I concur, is to approve the new title and job description with additional duties and for the pay range to be $21 to $24 per hour, depending on qualifications. It should be 40 hours weekly with the additional duties. The other custodian presently earns $17.25 hourly. I've attached the job description for your review and recommend approval of the change. And you could make that approval pending any changes that the Personnel Board may want to make any adjustments, because we'll send it to them also. The yellow in the,
I don't have a copy of that.
okay, I'll give you mine.
It should be down, further down, about almost at the end.
Old business, is it at the end
It's
then?
after
And then-
me. It's under,
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
you know what, take mine.
I got it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, you'll see the yellow highlighting, that is the changes, and we've just added some additional pieces. We think that, we've not made it so comprehensive or administratively that you can't have the same person be cleaning, because those duties still have to be done. So they would just take up a little more. I'd had a conversation with our present custodian, and I was actually trying to, see if I could get him to stay by increasing his hours, because he was at 30, was it 30 hours? He was 30 hours, and he didn't have any duties that would have been some project management. But he could have done it. So we just like to utilize the people more fully. We also would like not to have turnover every 1 or 2 years. So that's been a position that's been difficult to fill and keep.
What, do we have a list of the facilities? When we say the facilities, what buildings are we talking about? Obviously this one.
It's going to be this one, but as it comes up, we may have, quite often Fort Dresser Hill will have an issue, or one of the other facilities might have an issue, and Kurt's the one that gets called. We would have this person start getting up to speed as we go along, maybe not on day one, but as they go along, we may have them kind of oversee a project, animal control, if that needed to happen during the day. So it depends on their qualifications. They would be able to assist in other areas too. And we did have this custodian going down there one day to the animal control, so they also did double duty, not just this building.
What are the wishes of the board?
Rick's still reading.
And that's-
I mean, if, I'm not saying we don't need a person, I'm just, as I'm reading this, if I was reading this in a vacuum, I would get the impression that this is someone who's gonna be maintaining 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings. As opposed to just town hall. I mean, maybe all these are needed for just town hall, I mean, it is an old building, but.
Well, Kurt has been overseeing all of the buildings, so we certainly want this to encompass that and start to shift over so that he's doing more of his own work than facilities management. As you heard him tonight, he asked to start peeling off some of the IT and the facilities pieces. And this is a way to do it through attrition, where we're not hiring another person, but we're just upgrading a position that we already have.
And I'm sorry if I missed this, it is a 40-hour position.
Yes, sir. So it's going from 30 hours to 40.
What was the change in cost, Ms. Graber?
The present person across the street is getting $17.25. Kirby was just a little under that.
So,
And-
extra $5 an hour times,
200 times this be about 10 grand.
but also plus 10 additional
I
hours.
did it for 40, so
So probably a little better than 10 grand.
probably 12.
And with it being a full-time position with fairly comprehensive and decent salary, we may actually retain someone for longer than a year or two.
That's our thinking too.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we have the town administrator and the human resources director move forward with the job description and the hiring of the person for facilities maintenance for the town hall.
And also pending any changes by the
By the-
personnel board.
Yep.
I'd second that.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 I,
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
already
Lorenzo. I
had-
appreciate you being here to go through both this and the other
Take your
process.
Oreo balls and go home.
How smooth was that? I brought the
Thank
paper
you.
down to
My
Jessica.
God, they
Oh,
were.
you grabbed that on the way up that way. That was good. That was smooth.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good night.
All right. So let's get back to new business. Our first item under new business is the site plan application for Griffin Road Solar. Ms. Craver?
Just give me a moment. Through the chair, the planning board has provided you with a copy of a site plan application submitted to them by Michael Scott, P.E. of WDA Design Group on behalf of the applicant. Griffin Road Solar 2 LLC requesting the site plan approval to construct a ground-mounted solar array on property located at the end of Griffin Road, north of Sturbridge Road, west of Sullivan Road, and southeast of the Massachusetts Turnpike. The area subject to the application contains 10.3 acres and is situated on 3 parcels. You are asked to review and provide comments, if any, to the planning board no later than Wednesday, December 27th.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. Are there any comments from the board?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
Not even relating to the site plan on this site, but more towards, when we've had discussions before about the solar panels, Robin, we've been talking about the tax effect on it. Is the way that this is structured, corporate-wise, is that going to have somebody trying to get a TIF on this or reduce tax?
I have not reviewed that. If you'd like me to, I can. It would not be in time for this.
No, it's just, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
You know, you know what I'm asking. I'm
I do.
asking, are they changing the game?
Right.
I do.
Is it ongoing
And I will look at
situation?
that.
I would also put forward Mr. Singer's usual comments. Are there any other comments?
No.
Thank you very much. And we'll move on to our next item on the new business. It's also a site plan application for Pegasus Motors LLC. And I can read that.
Okay. Planning Board has provided you with another copy of a site plan application submitted to them by Jason Dubius, PE on behalf of Pegasus Motors LLC, requesting approval to operate a used car truck sales lot in an existing building with an existing parking lot on property located at 21 Worcester Road at the northwest corner of the intersection of Route 20 and Stafford Street. A residential dwelling also exists on the parcel. Said property is zoned community business. You are asked to provide a review and provide comments, if any, to the planning board no later than Wednesday, December 27th.
Thank you very
That's
much.
where the old coffee shop was, right?
Correct.
I think it may be squinting eyes and stretching a little bit to consider that a parking lot suitable for selling cars.
Excuse me.
Ms. Noble?
For point of clarification, when you say the old coffee shop, I'm trying to picture this in my
Moonlight.
mind.
The Moonstruck,
Moonstruck,
Oh, that
across
one?
from the diner.
Moonstruck Cafe? This
The
one's
It's
Yeah.
a
the
barber's shop.
So-
Yeah, okay,
if you
now
come
I
up the
know
hill
what that
to turn
is.
left onto
Both of them
Stafford
are
Street
here.
at Ted's,
Yes,
the opposite corner from Ted's.
okay, I understand. Really? A
Yeah,
parking lot?
That was my point.
No,
That's a
that
bit of
one.
a stretch.
I think, my opinion, my impression is that they couldn't get grass to grow, so they're calling it a parking lot.
It's gravel.
It's gravel.
It's all gravel.
I would recommend if, look at this.
Do you
I
want to
just
look at
want
the plan?
No, I know, yeah, I do want to look at
There's
this.
the building to use as office site, so, okay, so what they're doing, Rick, is they have 3 different positions for storage lots. A side of the building, right here, then one in front of the building, and then another one there. Oh, these are the parking spaces, I
With all the
apologize.
issues we've had regarding traffic at that intersection.
I mean, it's also been used as a business before for a while.
Yeah.
But if it's zoned.
It's zoned correctly,
If it's zoned,
yeah, and that's the problem.
you know, this is Stafford Street going out here, right?
No, Stafford Street is
Yeah,
up
Stafford
here.
Street here.
Teddy's is up here.
Oh, Ted's is,
Yeah, here,
Up here.
here's the fire.
Oh,
fire
right here,
department.
here's Stafford Street, right here.
Ted's right here.
So these are the houses, then there's one back, where's the
There's one house sitting back
Yeah,
there,
back
in there
here.
somewhere, yeah. But that is the lot where the main
house
struggle
right here?
is.
And it's not, there's no paving, there's sidewalk, that's already existing, so there's no additional
No.
paving. Would that impact stormwater at all? It's not, it's a change in use, but it's not a change in,
Additional impervious, zero. No, drainage, on their drainage calculation, they have zero.
so no increase in impervious surface area?
So they're not paving.
I've been revealing too many stormwater plants.
I had to look at a note. They all put them in different spots.
Are there any comments from the board?
Yeah.
I think I may go take a.
Can we send
close-
grumbling?
I think I may go in the daylight and take a closer look at that site.
Yeah, can we submit a grumble?
Yeah.
Or a
yeah.
raised eyebrow at
Or at
least.
least, yeah, I just,
For the record, there is an audible growl.
Yeah.
Wednesday, December 27th is the last day
when is it, December 27th?
to submit comments.
So if you don't have comments as a board, you certainly could make
I-
comments individually and just let the intern planner know that you have some thoughts.
I would like to suggest that, I don't know if I've ever done this before, suggest that we submit a comment that we have some questions as to the suitability of the parcel
Yes,
for
I
the
would
purpose
agree.
being proposed.
Mr. Planning Board expert?
You can
I-
say,
we-
no, I'm
I-
just
I
saying.
don't know that it'll
I'm
affect
just
anything,
saying,
but I
I'm
just want to
sure-
be on the record. as
No,
I
no,
just
I'm,
don't-
I'm sure we can submit it, but because it's zoned properly, and anything that they didn't do that they have to do will be brought up by the engineer. But I know what you're saying, I'm like, would I
but-
wanna be
but
going
if
in
they're
and
ask-
out of there?
If they're asking us for comments, this is one I'd like to give them back a comment on. I just have some real questions about the suitability. I welcome someone wanting to bring a new business to town, absolutely do, but
Does that mean you'd like to go to their meeting?
when is the meeting? It's the 27th?
27th.
That's the day I'm leaving, I won't be here.
Okay.
But I would just like,
Put it on my calendar.
good, I'd just like to propose to the board that I'd like to see us submit that as a comment, that we have. Not
That's
that,
fine.
I'm not even saying we're opposed, I'm just saying we have some questions as to the suitability of the parcel for that purpose.
Is it the best and highest and best use of the parcel? No. Okay. There's a lot more that goes, there's a lot more that goes into this.
I don't
no,
doubt that at
it's-
all.
So how would you like to get if you have questions about the suitability, how would you like to get those answered? So if I'm writing a letter to the board, what would you like me, what's the second sentence?
It's more
What do
like,
you want to know?
I'd like to know if they've done a traffic study.
No impact. The amount of parking spaces and the amount of people that are gonna go in. That's what.
They'll probably do it.
That's what triggers your traffic study. So in other words, that's what I looked at first. They had four parking spaces.
Where's that, yeah, I want to know where the driveway's going to be located, where the people are going to be pulling in and out on Route 20.
Existing curb cut.
Which is, in all fairness, the existing curb cut is not a great spot.
It stinks, but because they have a house, because they have multiple uses on that parcel, they're grandfathered into everything, they're not ripping a building down.
Right, so
It's
where's
right
the
there.
driveway?
Right here. It was actually just done when we repaved.
Was it?
They probably shortened it.
so here's the curb, here's
Yep.
the concrete sidewalk, and here's the
There's
asphalt
the apron right here. See,
Yep,
there's
I see
the
it.
two lines.
I mean, if,
But then, see, this is what triggers your traffic study, 1 and 2.
Mr. Swenson?
just a couple of thoughts I'd like to throw for the board's consideration is that if you think of going westbound, you have that offset, you have people trying to turn into the Gulf Station, turn into Ted's, turn into Stafford Street. Then you have that little offset with people that turn left to try to turn left to go up Carroll Hill. No, Carpenter Hill. So I think that's a concern, and then coming eastbound, you have the same thing, you have people that are looking to turn left to go into Stafford Street, which is okay, because there's a left turn lane there, that's all well and good, but now you're gonna have people stopping a little bit before that to try to turn into this place, and
all valid, all
I
valid
think it's just making a
points.
bad situation worse. But again, if it's
No, but
permitted,
the
zoning and-
the problem is, it's grandfathered in. If they were gonna do, site development there, Rick, like, if they were gonna,
choose
rip the
that.
building down,
That's your permit. This is a sales, car and truck sales. You permit that.
yeah.
Yeah,
so we would have the option of not issuing a license for that.
okay.
As appropriate, obviously.
Yeah,
It will
I'm not saying,
go through
I'm not saying I
due
necessarily want
process.
to get on that route yet.
The reason I'm bringing it up is if you thought you might not do that and you didn't like it enough, you may want to let them know
I-
now or enter into some discussion that if you are that, have that strong objections.
I would include
Just-
in your letter, I think maybe this is what we're looking for, is to have the planning board update us on the issues that they bring up and the answers they receive. Just at a future, ask for,
We can ask about traffic, you know,
I'd also ask
Entrance
about
and
sight
egress.
lines of people coming out Stafford Street to turn right
Yeah.
onto Route 20.
traffic and access.
Actually, that probably is a good way to approach it by saying that you would be giving the license. You have concerns about that type of business.
Access
It's
and
not
egress
even
and-
just the site,
Right.
the site plan necessarily, but you're not sure about
Safety issues.
Yeah.
the safety issues.
Okay. Does that make sense? Is that cohesive enough? Yeah, we're just throwing thoughts out at you.
That's fine. Mary, Mary has the magic of synthesizing it.
Thank you, Mary. I think I thank her at least once a meeting, once each meeting.
as we should.
Yes, we should.
Yes.
We should probably more. Any more comments or questions for the site plan application? All right, so then we'll move on to our next item under new business. That's the MMA annual meeting, a voting delegate, Ms. Craver.
Yes, sir, the MMA meeting and trade show will take place January 19th through the 20th at the Heinz Convention Center and Sheraton Boston Hotel. One of the highlights of the annual meeting is the numerous workshops they offer. In order to ensure timely reservations, I would ask the board members that will be attending to complete the attached registration form and return it to our office for processing. Reservations for the hotel would have to be done by each individual as they require your credit card to hold the room. Lastly, at this meeting, Maya, our insurance company, conducts their annual business meeting and luncheon, which will be held on Saturday, January 20th, from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. If any members are attending, please let our office know, as reservations are required. There's also a need to provide them with a voting member from our municipality. What's the board's wishes? I will be going, and sometimes what you've done, if you only have one person that says they're gonna do, you vote me as the backup in case they don't make it.
I might actually be able to go this year.
Well, that's a first.
Not a first,
No.
but it's been years.
Well, first in a while since.
First in a
I know
while.
that you always lament the fact that you usually have.
I'm
a
usually on the
business
West
conference.
Coast
Yeah.
when this comes up, but I don't leave until like the 23rd. I don't leave till that next Tuesday.
Would you want to do the honors then?
I can't commit yet, so I wouldn't want to be the voting member,
Mm-hmm.
but I still, even if I can't be the voting member, I'm still gonna try to go.
I know I won't be able to make it.
Yeah,
Then I would make a motion that we appoint the town administrator as an alternate,
Yep.
given her voting powers to represent the town.
I'll second that.
Motion and second, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Now for the voting member. Ms. Noble, do you plan on going?
It was not on my schedule.
I've been previously. It's a great event. It's one, it's a trade show. Two, it's a way to network with a lot of other town, administrators, managers, selectmen, councilmen, mayors. It's great. There's some really good luncheons to help facilitate that discussion.
Well-
Also, there's a lot of good panels.
And one of the best parts is watching the town administrator scour the trade show floor for the best swag to bring back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Under orders from other.
Orders from the office,
already heard.
exactly.
I have to
exactly.
get two each.
No, it actually, I agree, it is very valuable. I enjoyed it the times I went, and I'm kind of excited that I may be able to go again.
I will be presenting at the MMA. As you know, I'm the chairman of the MMA's Policy and Energy Committee. So I will be presenting at the business meeting their resolution on climate change.
Very good.
I know, was it last year you did the panel on stormwater?
Yes. Moderated that panel.
I don't know about for 50-50 whether or not I can attend as well.
January's a tough month.
January is a tough month.
My winter schedule does not allow me to. I have made the faux pas of saying I'm going before and never made it.
Well, if you're going to try, Mr. Swenson, they could vote you as a voting member, and if you don't go.
Then you could go. That would be
Then I can
fine.
go
That
and
would be
then-
fine.
Is there a
Yeah.
motion?
I'll make a motion, if Rick goes, he'll be the voting member.
Second.
Okay, motion second to appoint Mr. Swenson as the voting member for the luncheon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
I have a gig that Saturday night, but I could go for I could go for Saturday to the gig.
Yeah, I believe
For
the
Sunday.
lunch is at
Yeah.
luncheon meetings at noon. Also, for those of you who wish to attend, please make sure you fill out the registration form.
Hang on to this.
Wonderful. We have no items under old business. Are there any committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move to the town administrator's report.
Casella rate increase, we've been notified that by Casella, there'll be a rate increase effective January 1st for Charlton residents in the amount of $1.50 per month. Their weekly rates are gonna increase to $37.85, and every other week service will increase $32.66. Other towns are charged $50.47 for the weekly service and $43.54 for every other week service. I am working to find out when they may be stopping their services, and as you know, we are pushing to keep our contract viable.
I was gonna say, this increase falls within, still meets everything laid out in the
Right.
agreement.
Right, yes.
So
Right
is it-
now, they are still operating, so.
This
the
is
agreement
a
is fine.
across-the-board increase for all towns.
Appears that way, yes.
At the same, obviously, if they increase it by $1.5, and they increase it by some number higher than that for other towns.
Yeah,
Yes.
our contract with
25%.
them is that we get a percentage lower than their regular retail
Right.
rate.
So they
Just
would-
wanna make sure it stays within that.
So they would have increased it other rates by $2.
Yes. Oxford preambulation of boundaries. We have been notified by the town of Oxford that they have completed their preambulation of the town boundaries in September 2016. They provided the board with a full copy, which is in your read file. These boundaries are done every 5 years, generally. I don't think that the board has walked its
I don't think we've.
boundaries.
Didn't you do it once?
I never did it. I never did that. One thing I've never done.
So if you would like to, generally what we do is notify the abutting town, and if they'd like to join us, they will. And you walk the boundaries, find the main points, the boundary markers, and just tabulate that you've seen them. So we would just record that you've seen them and walked through.
One of them is in my backyard.
I was just gonna say, there's gotta be a couple of them over there, Leicester, Oxford, and Charlton.
Yeah, I'm right. I've got Leicester in my backyard, Oxford in my side yard.
I
So
want to say we did it at least once since I've been
I
here.
thought somebody did it once.
think we
Can
I
we-
can't remember who told me.
Obviously, it's a multi-day affair, right?
Oh,
Could be
okay.
in the
for Charlton.
spring.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we revisit this sometime?
spring?
Yeah, once the snow's gone.
Sure.
And could I also ask that if we have a previous perambulation that has happened?
You
if we
don't
could-
need to do that one?
If
Or-
we, if we could get a copy of it, just to see what bounds they had and how many there are, where they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just see when the last time we did it. If
Yeah.
it was like 1960, it'd be about time.
We'll do some research and get where
Thank
the
you.
boundaries are and things
Yeah.
like that.
And obviously, for that, you can just bring that up sometime in spring.
Okay. Joint meeting, we held a joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, EDC, and Finance Committee. I'll be working with the Human Resource Director and Bill Scanlon, who is the interim planner, to look at trends in the state for the commission. We had a conversation today, and he's gonna take a look at and he had some comparable towns that he felt were kind of ahead and kind of looking at what the best practices is. So he's going to do that, and try to have it ready for 2 weeks. Do you want to try to start scheduling that next joint meeting? Because I believe we walked out of there, the planning board really did see this as something they wanted to move forward quickly. So if
we
you'd
can
like.
Shoot for the possibly After, do you think it'll take more than 2 or 3 weeks to do? So between our next,
He
our
said
next
2
meeting?
weeks.
Okay, so can we, maybe our off meeting on the
Off meeting?
11th, or whatever
Workshop again,
next
yeah.
day is? Yeah. Can't see the calendar.
It's yeah, I can't see that
Oh,
far.
just,
Okay, so you're,
7th, January 7th.
Okay.
At 6 p.m. That's okay with the board?
Mhm.
It was a good meeting, last week. Everyone talked about their opinions and what their thoughts on what they're looking for a planner.
Everybody agreed on the common goal. and-
Good.
Which
Good.
is, and how to move forward.
Yeah,
from it, so.
It seems like the combined position, but also a huge focus on, public interaction and, customer service.
very good.
So thank you for working on that.
I have a few more.
What?
Tomorrow night, Finance Committee is going to be meeting, and the school superintendent will be attending their meeting to talk about the override at 6:30. If you can make it, it would be helpful, as they are determining, and they'll be having a discussion. I don't know how they'll land as determining, because I think they're waiting for the school to make a decision. But they're considering on how many questions, what the number is, the date, the time. Right now, we've been informed that they're looking at April. It originally had been February, so. And they have been provided with the costs and the timeframe. But-
And a big thanks to Ms. LaCroix and the clerk's office for getting that together.
LNG project. Do you
Oh,
remember that one?
oh,
I
that's-
had a
that's
call
still a thing?
today from
Really?
Mike regarding the LNG project, and he wanted to make sure I knew that they were still interested, and he's going to keep me updated. So that was kind of out of the blue, and I told him I had heard, I thought he went to New Hampshire, but I did have an opportunity to speak to the property owner. He hadn't heard from him yet, but they still have it optioned, so we're waiting to see what will be the next step. And the water project that we have, the water betterment, we sent out about 170 letters to the residents. You know that they've been waiting for the application for them to be reimbursed for their water betterments. That went out. We've had 7 returned. So we've been pretty busy in the office. They're starting to come in and asking questions and getting their paperwork in order. So that is in process. There is a couple of properties that had water betterments that the collector treasurer is still working on to make sure it's correct. And those letters hopefully should go out at the beginning of next week. And that's all I have at this point.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the town administrator? Thank you for your update. Is there any other business that was unknown at the time of posting besides the custodian?
I have 2 quick things, if I could.
Mr. Swenson?
I would like, as we're planning to go into the new year, to replace this and actually look into getting an actual telephone conference system.
I'll second
Sticking a
that.
mic in a telephone, I think we can do a little better than that. They've come down, the Polycom systems and such have come down enough in price that I think we can get something that would sit in the center of the table.
Also possibly hook up to the.
It could also hook up to our system, to the speakers we have here, and,
Okay.
okay?
I know the technology committee meeting will be meeting within the next 2 weeks. I just put it in my calendar. I will ask Deb to put that on as a
Perfect.
agenda item.
My second one is I want to do something about that clock. In 12 years, it's never been correct.
It seems like it's always 5 minutes behind. Maybe we
You
should
go to
just switch
Staples
clocks.
and buy a clock for $39. You know, we don't have to go over the top, but
Yes, sir.
Does it ever slow down beyond 5 minutes behind? Because it's consistently 5 minutes behind.
We did replace this in the last year. We just replaced it with one that looks the same, so maybe it's time to change it.
Is there any other business?
No.
Good points, Rick. All right, what is the board's wishes of going into executive session?
Through the chair,
Mr. McGrath,
I make motion we enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body regarding the police/clerical/fire/highway unions, the Southbridge landfill litigation, the IMA litigation, Casella zoning appeal, 508 International, if the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. The chair does declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the public body. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath?
Aye?
Ms. Noble?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are now in executive session. We'll be exiting executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. Everyone, please have a safe, happy Christmas and holiday season. Good night.